look like fun. And you know, Walt tells me it isn't very hard to turn wood once you learn how. Remember last week when Walt had so much trouble with his storm window? Well, maybe you have one that looks like this. You can fix it now that Walt has shown you how. Sawing looks easy, doesn't it? Well, it is once you learn the knack. Yes, this is Walt's home workshop. And here in his shop is Walter Durbin, ready to show us how we can do some of those things around the house that we've been wanting to do. Walt is a veteran of over 30 years' experience in the building trades field and the author of 2 volumes on carpentry. Let's see what Walt is up to tonight.
Hi there. Tonight I'm going to show you how to build a sawhorse. You know, the sawhorse is one of those gadgets that, well, you just can't get along without it in your home workshop. It's one of those jobs, in fact, you'll be wanting 2 of them before you get along very far. For you who have a little workshop of your own, you will find it a very interesting little project to begin with. And you'd be surprised the number of different operations that are involved that can be used in other places. Besides, right here on the sawhorse. Now, a good sawhorse has certain specifications. It's got to be sturdy, stand well. It's got to be strong, so that you can step on it and use it for a step ladder of 2 steps. It should have a tray in it, so that you can put all your tools in it, and nails and screws and what have you. Pick it up and take it to the job, instead of bringing the work to the shop. If you take some strips and fasten it down on top of the sawhorse, you make a trough, which will be just the thing to hold that chair when you're upholstering or when you're refinishing, just the right height to work on. Now you take 2 sawhorses like this, put some planks across, and you'll have that scaffold just about the right height to reach the ceiling. And there's one other thing, which I think is probably just as important as anything. And that is, the sawhorse is just a darn good place to sit down on when you want to spin a yarn or 2 with that neighbor of yours. Now then, as to making of a sawhorse. Well, one of the first things we want to consider, and that is the materials that are required for making it. I would advise you to get some good, soft material. All the material that you see in this sawhorse are stock sizes that come from the lumberyard. All we have to do is cut them to length and do a little fitting on them. You don't have to rip them. White pine makes a good wood. It's soft, it's easy to work, and it's plenty strong. Now, as to dimensions. I have here on this chart the dimensions that are of material necessary. Now, you may want to copy some of these down so that you can make a list of them when you get ready to make one. For the top, you want a 2x4, 3 feet 8 inches long. For the legs, 1x4, 9 feet long. And for the tray and ends, that's this down in here and the ends, we want a piece 1x10, 5 feet 6 inches long. And the reinforcements, those are the side pieces, are 1x2, 9 feet long. And when you go to the lumberyard, you ask for a 2x4, but you're not going to get a stick that's 2 inches by 4 inches. That stick, if it's dressed, is 1 3/4 by 3 5/8. The reason for that is, when that piece of lumber was cut at the mill, sawed, it was fully 2 inches by 4 inches. But they had to allow for dressing. And after it got dressed out, and in the shape that you will get it, it will be only 1 3/4 by 3 5/8. Now, the other boards, you see, the 1x4 would be 3/4 by 3 5/8, and so on. The leg is about the first thing that we should start with. Now, you will notice that the leg pitches to the front. Up here, it's set 4 inches back, and down here it comes just in line with the end of the sawhorse. Now, the reason for that is if you step on the end of the sawhorse, it won't tip up. Now, take the framing square and hold it like this. You see, it's 4 inches in, and it'll just line up with the toe of the leg. Now, you see, this forms a right triangle. That's how we get the angle cut on that leg. And you will notice, too, that here it forms a triangle. In fact, a right triangle. Remember that old problem that we had in geometry? That right triangle? Well, the leg is the hypotenuse of that right triangle. Now, we want the legs to pitch outwards so it'll stand firmly and not tip. Now, I notice that the leg is set in here, 3/8 of an inch. So if we draw a line up to the end, 3/8 of an inch, and then set our square down to that point and measure the inside here, you will find that this is 5 1/4 inches, and held right up to the to this point, we again have that right triangle. That will give us the angle cut at the bottom and at the top, so it will be perfectly level. So we take a board, 1x4, and we'll start to lay out that leg. Lay your square to 1x4 to make this top cut. 1x4 to 4 inches and 24. Notice, I take figures on the outside of the square and along that same edge. And I'll draw a line. I'll make a mark down here at the 24 point. And then I will shift the square down, again hold it to 4 and 24. Now, I have chosen 24 inches because I find for me the 24-inch height sawhorse is just about right. Now, for you who are tall, you may want to have it 26 inches. And those of you who are shorter may wish to have it less than that. But 24 is a good average height. Now we turn the board on edge, and we want to get the side cuts so that it will be flush with the top and also fit onto the floor. Here, you may recall, I used the figure 5 1/4 and 24. We draw a line here. Shift the square down, and we draw that right from that line. All right, now you see I have the lines all the way around. You will also notice that these two lines are parallel, and those two lines are parallel. Now, that's very important, so that you do not get, otherwise you're not apt to get it to rest firmly on the floor. Now, we'll saw the saw. Here we have a compound cut. Normally, you see, we would hold our saw square across, and we would cut across. But we're sawing at an angle across this board. We'll also have to saw at an angle down this way. Notice the saw is at an angle here. We begin by watching this line that is on the edge to follow that particular angle. Now we have established that angle. Now we'll watch this line and follow down with our saw. When you get almost through, reach over so that it does not drop down and break. Now I want to saw this side, but you see, in order to saw it here, I haven't got a mark. Now I want to transfer this mark over to the other side. We have a tool that we call a T-bevel. Now this is adjustable. You see, you can move it to any angle you wish. Now we'll set this T-bevel to this particular angle, because that's the angle that we want to transfer over to the other side. And we want that angle to go in this direction. So we'll turn the T-bevel, and we'll mark across here. Now we've got the mark so that we can watch it as we saw. will notice that I left the pencil mark on this part because that's the part that we want to keep. And we saw it on the waist side of the line. All right, now here we have the first piece. And let's call this the pattern. Now from this pattern, we can make all the other legs by setting this first one right on here, marking it for length for the side cut, turning it down this way, and marking it on this side. We won't have to cut this end because that is already taken care of. All right, 2 legs done. I have already sawed out the other 2 legs, and we won't bother with that now. Now let's get at the top. We'll take a piece, 2x4, and saw it off to length. No need of me showing you how to saw that off. You see, it's 42 inches long. Again, you can make a sawhorse any length you choose. 42 is just a good ordinary length. Now, from one end, see, the legs are set 4 inches in. You measure in 4 inches, square line across. Turn it on edge. Now we've got to get an angle cut down in that direction. Remember, we used 4 and 24 to get the angle cut on top of the leg. We'll use that same dimension again. Laying the square so that we have 24 on this edge of the piece and 4 up here. Draw a line. We'll do the same thing on the other side. 4 and 24. Now, to make sure that we get that mortise, see, we've got to gain this in. We've got to mortise that out. To be sure that it's of the correct width, we'll just take that leg that we're going to put in here, and we'll mark that so that we will have the correct width. This must be set back 3/8 of an inch. To do that, we use the marking gauge. Now, this is the marking gauge. It has a spur here, which does the marking. This is the head, and this is the beam. Now, we take our measurements from the spur to the beam. Set it at 3/8 of an inch. And we can gauge a line along the top. We gauge another line along on this side. Now, it's hard for you to see that line. You can't see that, can you? All right, let's make it so that you can see it. But just take our pencil and draw a line right in that little groove. Now we can see that line. Let's put it in the vise. Have to make the cuts. Here are the lines. Now we want to cut out on the waist side. That is this part in here. So we must leave a line stand on the 2x4. Don't saw beyond this edge and don't go beyond this line. Now we'll make several cuts. Anywhere in one line. This will help us to take out the stuff. Take a chisel with a bevel down and proceed to rough this out. Now that gauge line that we had makes a very fine place to settle that chisel. A pencil line wouldn't do that. So you see, the gauge has an advantage by gauging the line, scoring it into the surface. Now you rough this out, being careful that you do not go below the points. Now this may seem a little dangerous to have the sharp edge of the chisel come towards you. If you would be putting a lot of pressure on that chisel, yes, I would say it is dangerous. But when we're making light taps, there is not the danger that it may injure us. After it's roughed out, you take the chisel in your hand and you finish up the cut, smooth it in this manner. Notice I've got both hands in back of that chisel. Both hands in back of that chisel. And by working it in this fashion, instead of pushing it straight through, we take a shearing cut. And that way we're assured a smooth cut. And we don't have to put near as much pressure onto the chisel. We get that nice and straight all the way across. So that when we put our chisel in here, it'll be perfectly straight across. Now, the other side, we do exactly in the same way. See, now that's your housing. Notice it's at an angle. That'll help it to pitch the legs out at the proper angle. I have prepared here a 2x4 in the same way. I've already nailed 2 legs on to save a little time, because it's made exactly the same way. Now we will fasten the legs that we made to this side. I'm using 8-penny nails to do this. It's a funny name, isn't it? 8-penny. Why don't you just say 2.5 inches and be done with it? 2.5-inch box nail. No, they say 8-penny nail. Well, that's an old English custom. Been handed down. There are several stories. One story is that 1,000 nails weighed 8 pounds. Maybe it's true. Maybe that is the reason. I don't know. But at any rate, it's an 8-penny nail. So, and it's a box nail. A box nail is lighter than a common nail, so that when you nail it, it's not so apt to split the wood. Now in nailing, you want to stagger the nail. By staggering, I mean we put one up here, and then one down here, and one in the middle, so they're at an angle, not in the same line. That is apt to cause the wood to split. That is of the lower piece. All right, one down. Now we'll get the other one over on the other side. Again, we'll put our nails so that they will not fall into the same grain. Keep it flush with the top. There you are. Now let's get at this end piece. That's the support, you know, that carries the top piece, holds the leg at the proper angle, and gives the leg strength as far as spread is concerned. You know, in our specifications, I said we'd have a board, a 1x10, which is long enough so that we can lay out the tray and the 2 end pieces. So, from the end of that board, we'll cut out the 2 end pieces. Now remember, we spread those legs so that they're 5 1/4 to 24 inches. So we lay our square again to 5 1/4 and 24. You slide it right over to the end so as to save material. Now this is a 1x10, and a 1x10 is 9 inches and a half long. Now we want our tray to fit the complete width of that sawhorse. So we measure 9 1/2 inches on the bottom. And we want it to be sure to fit at the top. So we measure up here. And we see that is 5 1/4. So we'll measure 5 1/4 up at the top. Now we'll draw a line between those 2 points. And end pieces laid out. We'll make two just like that. I have already cut one out because there's no need of me going through the process of sawing an end piece. You know how we saw. So we will now nail this end piece into place. Now that's going to be a little difficult because it still is not too firm. We'll rest the legs over the top of the bench. Take a few nails. Again, that 8-penny variety. And we'll hold the end piece snug up against under the top. And we'll set that first nail. Let me set the one on the other side. Bring it up snug against that top. This is important. If we don't do that, this will settle down afterwards and the legs will stick out over above the top and it'll be irregular. Now draw the leg in so that it is flush. Line it up on the other side. And we can well put in another nail, 3 on each side. Now then, let's get out the tray. Then we get back to our piece. The first thing we want to do is to lay the board into position like this, resting on the end pieces. Draw a line underneath. Do it on both sides. Then, let it rest on the other side and draw a line. Now, I want to, maybe I better cut this off first. That's right, I should cut this to length. That's really one important thing. That we square one end off, and then we get the correct length, and saw the board to correct length first, and square across. Before we can go to work and fit it into the other side. See, the saw is binding a little. That's due to the board warping. Take it out, start it all over again. Clean up the saw. Now then, we'll hold the board so that it'll be right up to that line that we drew. That is, the bottom of the board is right up to that line. Now we'll hold it flush with the outside, and we'll mark here and we'll mark there to get the angle of the leg. We'll rest it here so that we can get this mark. And there. So we can get this side mark. All right? Here you have that mark. Now let's bring that mark down along the top. Also on this side. Down. There we have our cutting line. Here we have a cutting line. We saw that at an angle. Cut it off as far as this other line is. There. Now we drop into place and hope that it'll fit. It does, apparently. We'll nail that down with, let's say 3 nails on each side. Now in nailing, into an end piece like this, into the narrow part. Notice that we should sight with the board so that our nail will not be coming out on the side. Before you drive that nail home, always take a second look to make sure that it isn't coming out. If it does start to come out, then you can withdraw it before the head is driven down to the bottom. We will put on the reinforcing parts. Pick the 1x2. Hold it right up here. Now, you see that reinforcing bar? The bottom of it should be flush with the bottom of the tray. Bring it right up, flush there. Mark it on the other side. Now, maybe we better square a line across so that we be sure to get a square cut. This reinforcing bar does two things. It will make a tray, that is, give an edge to that tray, as well as help to carry the load on the tray. I want to be sure and nail it so that it goes through the leg and into the tray bottom. We ought to put about 2 nails along here. Now we can do the same on the other side. Take another piece and mark it to correct length and saw it off. And now we can nail this on here in the same way. Now for the reinforcing parts. Well, I'll have to do that a little later on. It's been awful nice for you to stop in and see this. I hope you've enjoyed it. Now, no doubt, because there were so many different operations, you'd like to get some information on this. And if you would, I've written out some instruction sheets. And if you'll write into this station, I'm sure they will send them to you. Good night. And next week...
If you wish written instructions on how to make a sawhorse, just address your request to Walt's Home Workshop, Station WNBQ, the merchandise marked, Chicago 54. You're cordially invited to stop in again next Monday night at Walt's Home Workshop on Channel 5. That address again is Walt's Home Workshop, Station WNBQ, the merchandise marked, Chicago 54.
This is NBC Television.